We spoke a lot about fertility. We spoke a lot about like birth rates. From the data, what do you think can be done about the declining birth rates? How do you think we can, what are some of the levers we can pull, maybe to kind of maybe inform people, not to stop it radically, but to inform people about what some of the reasons why birth rates are declining?
So I actually don't think we should do anything to stop the decline in birth rates, because I think once you see declining birth rates as a problem, that leads us down a very dangerous path. I think people should be absolutely free to decide however many children they want to have, whether or not to have kids. It should absolutely be everybody's individual choice. Governments shouldn't be interfering in those choices in order to get a benefit for society. Separately, there is a concern that some people are not fulfilling their fertility intentions. So across Europe, for example, if you ask people how many kids they want to have and how many kids they have had, there's a gap. People tend to say, on average, they want around 2 kids. But fertility rates have been below 2 kids per woman for decades now in many countries, since the 1970s in the UK. So there is a bit of a concern that people are not able to have the number of kids that they want to have. And we should absolutely support people to have the number of kids that they want to have. We should, for example, have generous maternity and paternity leave so that people can balance work and family, which is explicitly what people say they want to do. We should have cheap or free childcare, for example, to help people manage their family lives. So we absolutely have to have those family-friendly policies in place to support people's fertility intentions. We shouldn't worry about fertility itself. There's a past history of worrying about fertility, and it led to serious human rights abuses. So in the 60s and 70s, people became very concerned about overpopulation, about there being too many people on the planet. So after the Second World War, global population growth shot up. It really is quite astonishing if you actually look at the numbers. There's a Guardian website where you can put in your date of birth and it will tell you how many people were on the planet the day you were born. So when I do this, it comes up with a figure of 3.7 billion people. Do you know what the current global population is?
I think it's around 9 billion, isn't it?
8.1, so close, but yeah, a little bit lower. But yeah, so just in the time that I've been on the planet, global population has more than doubled. And I'm no longer young, but still, I haven't been on the planet very long in the grand scheme of things. So over the past few decades, global population growth has been incredibly rapid. And in the 60s, 70s, 80s, people were very concerned about this. And governments and international organizations explicitly tried population control. So they tried to reduce fertility rates. In those decades, high fertility rates were in lower and middle income contexts. So this was very largely happening in poorer and middle income countries, not high income countries. But the impetus was often coming from high income countries who wanted to control population. You may know about the forced sterilization campaigns in India, for example. This is very well known. So the Indian government decided that they were going to control their population by really forcing people to be sterilized against their will, sometimes against their knowledge. That is obviously a very serious violation of people's human rights. It also led to deaths because sometimes these practices were not done in the most hygienic, the best practice way. So the overpopulation panic led to really serious consequences. If you worry about the population, you lose sight of individual human rights. And if we now start to worry about low fertility, the same thing is going to happen. If we say we have to implement policies to increase fertility, you're focusing on the population level, what's good for the population, not what's good for people. And that is a very dangerous slope to go down.
That is a brilliant point. Thank you for that. 'Cause, yeah, it's a fantastic point. I never thought of that because there is so much talk right now about underpopulation, but I think in that loss, you lose the individual, you lose the people that you're talking about. So yeah, thank you for that. It's really well said. I did want to mention another slightly difficult topic, but I want people to understand a little bit more about it. One of some of your research, you kind of also research eugenics and kind of scientific, I guess there's something that I don't even know how to phrase it, but like the way that science is used in certain types of ways. Is there a way you can kind of inform us a little bit on what eugenics is and the dangers of that kind of ideology?
So eugenics essentially comes out of the same idea that we should care about the population and not individual people. So eugenics is the idea that human populations can be improved through social policies such as preventing some people from reproducing and encouraging other people from reproducing, from preventing some people from migrating into your population, based on the assumption that not everybody has equal value to society. So the idea behind eugenics is that some people are just inherently better than others, some people are superior, and some people are inherently inferior. And we have to arrange society so that we encourage superior people to have children, to live and survive well. Inferior people should be discouraged from reproduction. If they're outside your national borders, you should not let them migrate in. And the Nazi regime, we know, took these ideas to their, if you like, their obvious conclusion, and they murdered inferior people in horrifyingly large numbers. The Holocaust against the Jewish population killed likely 6 million Jews. They also targeted people such as disabled people, many other groups, Roma groups as well. So eugenics is a very dangerous ideology, and it's based on faulty science. So what eugenicists believe is that some people are inherently genetically better than others. Often eugenicists are obsessed with intelligence. Eugenicists think that certain people are inherently more intelligent than others, and in fact, certain groups of people are inherently more intelligent than others. And a lot of this is focused on race. So eugenicists often believe that white people are genetically more intelligent than Black people, for example. That is scientifically indefensible. Race is not a biological or genetically meaningful concept. There is obviously genetic variation amongst humans, but it doesn't sort itself into clusters, racial clusters. Genetic variation is, it's called clinal, so it's gradual variation between populations. It's not clustered variation. So race has no biological meaning. If race has no biological meaning, it simply can't be the case that white people are genetically more intelligent than Black people. That's a nonsensical thing to say from a scientific point of view. But eugenicists believe this, and they say that, what they're saying, and what contemporary eugenicists are saying, for example, is that Black people shouldn't be allowed to migrate into white countries, majority white countries, because they will reduce the intelligence of those populations. Eugenics was very popular in the early 20th century in places like the US and the UK, not just Nazi Germany, but it fell out of favor. At least it appeared to fall out of favor. The ideas underlying it never really went away. But particularly after the Nazi regime, eugenics became a dirty word because it was associated with the Nazi regime. But it's never gone away, and it's really now coming back onto the political agenda. There are people who are now very explicitly making statements like, Black and white people are genetically different, and we must have social policies to account for this fact.
Thank you for that. I know that's it's difficult to have these conversations because there's so much. It's so much difficult because the words, you have to pick your words carefully. But I think it's very important we have these conversations, like you mentioned, because when the conversation goes away, then the people is filled by other people with kind of ideas who kind of they claim to be scientific ideas when we know that that's not true. So thank you for that. That was very, very important. I'm sure my audience will take that, and I'll encourage people to learn more about eugenics, because when I also learned about it, I knew the word, but I didn't understand the depth and how prevalent it is in some ideologies and things like that. So that was very well said too. I also want to close off by giving some people some solutions. We've talked about a lot of problems and a lot of ways kind of things have changed over time, from community to kind of family to kind of fertility. So coming back onto community, what are some of the, from scientific data, what are some forms of community support that you think people can kind of recapture, and like what are the benefits of that, to kind of reinstill that in people's minds?